talk to us a little bit about serial entrepreneurship. That's a big thing today. It seems to be growing. What are some of the pros and cons? What are some of the dangers?
Well, of course, one of the reasons why serial entrepreneurship has been growing is there's a lot of more failed entrepreneurs out there now than there were 20 years ago. And so they want to keep doing this. So certainly we're seeing a huge growth in serial entrepreneurship and a recognition that this is important. And I think one reason we're paying more attention to it is that the venture capitalists seem to be paying attention to it. There seems to be a belief, maybe not among all VC firms, but a lot of them, that they would rather invest in someone who's done this before, failed or successful in many cases, than a novice who doesn't really have the experience for how to do this. And so because VCs maybe seem to be liking to invest in serial entrepreneurs, that then raises interesting questions, right? From an academic perspective, what have they, if anything, gained from their experience? Is there some benefits that we can see coming out of this? And what we've typically seen has been the idea that these managers learn something, right? They learn, maybe it's just how to run a business or how not to run a business in some cases, or how to hire a team, or maybe they develop personal relationships that help them become better managers in order to do this. And I think for a while in the entrepreneurship literature, that was the perspective, that was the idea that this is what was going on. And then there became this point of view that said, well, look, only really successful entrepreneurs in their first venture seem to do better the second time. So maybe they aren't really learning anything. They're actually simply just, we're figuring out who the good ones are and the bad ones. The good ones succeeded before and they succeed later. The bad ones failed before and they fail later. And so there's no learning maybe. It's simply just a nature of us sorting out who the good and bad entrepreneurs are. And what I've tried to focus on in my research is to try and kind of combine the two perspectives, to think about the importance of success and failure, but to think about learning as well. And so what we focused on in this research that I've been involved in is the idea that failure leads to kind of behavioral biases. It leads to kind of attribution of the failure towards something that wasn't my fault, it was somebody else's fault, right? This is what we call the fundamental attribution error. If things go wrong, it's someone else's fault. If things go right, it's all because I was brilliant. And the way that will manifest among entrepreneurs is if their first venture fails, they may be more likely to blame the external environment. They might change industries between their first venture and their second venture because they blame the industry that they were in for their failure, and it's not their fault from that perspective. And the reason this is really important is that managers often start ventures in business industries they know pretty well, and they certainly in the course of their venture gain industry experience and knowledge that may not completely translate if they move from retail into hotel management or something like that from one venture to the next. And so this fact that these failed entrepreneurs fail in their first business, change industries, and then don't do well may actually be attributed to the fact that changing industries is what's really problematic for serial entrepreneurs, because they sacrifice a lot of the knowledge and experience that they have through their career and through that first venture. And that's exactly what we see in the data that we've looked at both in China and in the United States, is that really it's the changing of industries that's really problematic for the success of the later venture. It doesn't really matter whether you succeeded or failed in the first one, though failure leads you to change industries more likely, but simply changing industries is what the real problem is, which leads to this perspective that, look, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to think about what it is you're really good at. What do you really know? What can you build on? Because the new theory I've been working with and trying to kind of vet out there has been this idea that these entrepreneurs, they recognize that they have certain skills, but they're more likely to believe that they will translate into any context. And so they have this belief in their ability to take that skill and move it somewhere else. And maybe you're overstepping a little bit would be the advice that I would kind of offer and say, look, maybe you should stick to the stuff that you know a little bit better, because there's a reason you were good at this and wanted to do this and are passionate about it. And maybe just going off and trying something else radically different from what you've done in the past might put you at a disadvantage potentially at that point in time.
So really having that belief in yourself is partially for your success, but can also be a misstep.
Absolutely. Like everything else in kind of the business management world, it's a trade-off, right?
Yeah.
There's a ways in which you need to have that belief in yourself, or else you'll never quit your job and start your firm.
Right.
And you'll never overcome the failures that you're going to encounter along the way. But if you believe too much in yourself, if you're too overconfident, then you may stick in things longer than you should have because you believe that you can find a way to fix it. And certainly it may lead you to overestimate how flexible your knowledge and experience would be and how easily it would translate across different domains and different industries and different opportunities.